I was falsely accused of cheating in the exam by Jennifer, yet on my birthday David brought her to make peace with me. We're classmates. There's no need to make things so unpleasant. Indeed, there was no need, so I threw away his birthday gift and destroyed everything related to him, completely withdrawing from his world. I intended to have no further contact with him, but unexpectedly, at a business dinner many years later, he spotted me in the crowd at a glance in full view of everyone. David, his eyes turned red. Is it fun? You've been avoiding me for a full 7 years. During the break, the entrance of the classroom was crowded with people, all craning their necks to look inside. In just one break, the news that Jennifer from class 3 had accused a classmate of cheating spread throughout the school. Jennifer was lying on the table, her eyes swollen from crying all morning. Quite a few people gathered around her to comfort her, yet their eyes kept falling on me. Jennifer is the class monitor. Maybe she made a mistake because she was trying to maintain order. Everyone makes mistakes at S, just a misunderstandings. He's not that heinous, right? As soon as these words were spoken, many people nodded in agreement and looked over. They were all waiting for me to speak up and comfort Jennifer. Meeting their suggestive gazes, my throat tightened. The feeling of being ostracized welled up in my heart again. The school arranges classes according to academic performance. Class 3, as the top class in the entire grade, was the one I fought hard to get into. Jennifer had always had a good reputation, being gentle and enthusiastic. Well known throughout the grade on ordinary days, we all put on a show of being a united big family. But when real problems arose, not a single person stood up for me, who had joined the class halfway. I stared at them stubbornly, unwilling to yield. It's Jennifer who owes me an apology. Just as they were about to say something more, Jennifer suddenly looked up at me. She had cried so hard that her face was covered with tears. I know I was wrong, but I really didn't mean it. I'm sorry. Is that okay, Mary? She looked as if she had suffered a great grievance. Before I could say anything, she suddenly got up and ran out of the classroom. Then, there was a commotion outside the classroom. My heart raced, and I ran out as well. I saw Jennifer surrounded by a crowd. She was sitting on the ground, her knees bleeding, her head bowed, and she had stopped crying. A hubbub of voices filled my ears. Jennifer's parents had a car accident not long ago, and she's in a bad mood. Do you really have to be so overbearing? I'm really fed up. Is an apology really that hard to give? There was an empty space around me, and I stood there at a loss, looking up. I met the gaze of David, who had just come out of the office. David had beautiful eyes usually. When he looked at people, his eyes were cold, but when he looked at me, there was always a hint of softness. But at this moment, his eyes were tinged with obvious reproach. David volunteered to carry her to the infirmary. Jennifer, lying on David's back, met my gaze with her swollen eyes, and there seemed to be a hint of complacency in them. It was indeed complacency. At that moment, I felt as if I had been seen through. Jennifer had seen through my unspoken love for David. I was absolutely certain that the false accusation was intentional. After coming back from the infirmary, David came to me. The evening breeze ruffled his hair. Leaning against the railing, he looked down at me. It's just a word. Is it really that important to you? His tone was the same as usual, nothing different, but I could sense that he, like everyone else, was blaming me. My throat felt as if something was stuck in it, making it hard for me to speak. After a long while, I looked up at him. I don't understand. Why does she just cry a little, and then I become the one who did something wrong? David looked at me, stunned for a second. Perhaps my appearance of trying hard not to cry was rather comical, for the tense look on David's face relaxed. You didn't do anything wrong. David averted his gaze. I just thought there was no need to make things so ugly. The school bell rang urgently, making my heart race non-stop. I stood there, looking at David in a daze, and a wave of bitterness welled up for no reason. Was it really just that there was no need to make things embarrassing, or was there something else? David was nowhere to be found. Jennifer's seat was also empty. Someone told me that David had something to do and asked me to go home first. I softly said, "Oh, hot edge," not really knowing how I felt. On the way, people walked in groups of 2 or 3, chatting and laughing. I pedaled my bike with my head down. Somehow, a lot of memories suddenly came to me in the old neighborhood. David was well known. Everyone knew that although he seemed aloof, he was extremely protective of those close to him. Whenever I had a dispute with someone, David would always be the first to rush out to protect me. Without asking for the details, I lost my parents when I was young and lived with my grandmother in the old neighborhood. I used to follow David around, calling him brother all the time. But gradually I awkwardly avoided using that word. I called him David, using both his first and last name. David, carrying my school bag for me, looked at me lazily. Your wings are getting stiff. Now you dare to call me by my name directly. As if he had seen through something, I shouted in a loud voice. What brother? You're only a few days older than me. As if deliberately trying to oppose him, I shouted at the top of my lungs. I'll call you David. David, David, David. I thought David would teach me a lesson as he used to. But he didn't. He stood there looking at me for a long time, and then said resignedly, All right. I can't control you anymore, then. He mumbled in a low voice. Coincidentally, I don't like the title brother either. When I came to my senses, it was already pitch black. A distance between school and home wasn't far, but on this short journey, I turned my head back 108 times like a spinning top on the dim path. There was no familiar figure the next day. David waited for me to go to school together as usual. It seemed that nothing had changed. But on the way, I couldn't help but ask, pretending to be nonchalant, why he had come back so late yesterday. David casually explained that he was delayed by something. He didn't give a reason. But I soon found out as soon as I entered the classroom. I saw Jennifer looking up and smiling at David. Good morning, David. Oh, by the way, thank you for sending me home yesterday. I froze in place and slowly looked up at Jennifer. She had a beautiful smile. But I had never thought a person's smile could be so blinding. Actually, I had heard before transferee that Jennifer and David had a good relationship. I really wanted to pretend not to care. But how could I not? I cared so much that it hurt. So the something David mentioned was sending Jennifer home. I pursed my lips, and my nose suddenly felt sore and painful. I didn't talk to David on my own initiative the whole day. During the break, Jennifer suddenly came up to me. She put a cup of hot water on my desk. I turned my head, and before I could do anything, a crashing sound came. Jennifer's scream spread through the classroom. Many people turned their heads to look, and the classroom instantly fell into an eerie silence. Jennifer's face turned red. She stared at the broken water cup on the ground in disbelief, her voice choking. I wanted to apologize for what happened a few days ago. The water cup was shattered, and the scalding hot water splashed onto my ankle, turning it red. The more Jennifer explained that she didn't hold it steady, the more ice fell on me. I knew exactly what those looks meant. Looking at Jennifer in front of me, I understood in an instant. It was the same trick again. I really hated being framed. In the moment when Jennifer was looking aggrieved, I suddenly grabbed Jennifer and headed for the office. Stop pretending. I didn't even touch the water cup. Let's go to the teacher and check the surveillance. Jennifer was stunned for a second, and her face turned pale. She shook her head and refused to go. All of a sudden, there was a commotion. After taking 2 steps, someone suddenly stopped me. That's enough. My body stiffened, and I looked up to meet David's face. It was like being poured a basin of ice water over my head. I was completely cold from head to toe. David didn't talk to me on his own initiative the whole day today. But the first words he said to me were to take Jennifer's side. I knew very well that Jennifer did all these things because of David. He looked down at me, his expression a bit impatient and a bit helpless. Stop making a scene. Class is about to start. It was this kind of casual attitude again, and this tone of easily siding with Jennifer. The grievance that had been pent up in my heart since last night couldn't be suppressed at this moment and surged up. My eyes instantly turned red. And I pushed David hard. When I looked up, tears couldn't stop falling. David, you bastard, why should I be falsely accused by Jennifer again and again? Are you going to say it's unnecessary this time? Yes, having fulfilled my obsession. It may not matter to you, but it matters a lot to me. My sudden outburst stunned David. For 2 seconds she stared at me blankly, as if he didn't expect me to react so strongly. After a long while, his Adam's apple moved, and he said with difficulty, That's not what I meant. I insisted on checking the surveillance. Jennifer grabbed my wrist. It was my own carelessness. Don't bother the teacher with such a small thing. With this look, anyone with eyes could tell that the problem wasn't on my side. Many people who had spoken for Jennifer last time didn't stand up this time. I wiped away my tears and sat back in my seat, feeling extremely humiliated. David stuffed tissues into my hand. He looked down at me. Mary, I didn't mean that. I ignored him in the following days. David was always around me. David and I rarely quarreled. After school, I turned around and left. David seemed to have finally had enough. He suddenly grabbed my sleeve. My wrist was cold, and there was an extra delicate bracelet on it. It was a bracelet I had glanced at a few more times on my phone. The price was so high that I didn't dare to look at it a third time. Even David, who was from a wealthy family, couldn't get it easily. I froze in place, watching David bend down to look at me. Don't be angry with me. Okay. I wanted to take it off and return it to him without thinking. David stopped me. I originally wanted to give it to you. It's just a bit early, not yet your birthday. I still kept a straight face, but I felt that a lot of my anger had subsided. When I got home, I scolded myself for being so spineless. Just after scolding, the phone suddenly rang. My aunt's voice came from the other end of the phone, asking me how I was considering and when I would transfer to study at her place. I stared at the bracelet on my hand and said softly, I want to stay a little longer. After my grandmother passed away, the only thing I was attached to staying here was David. In the following days, David never mentioned Jennifer in front of me again. I still couldn't forgive her. I thought we had no more contact with Jennifer. But on my birthday, I heard some news. David had been going shopping and taking walks with Jennifer after school every day. These days my heart suddenly skipped a beat. A loud thunder rumbled across the sky. It rained heavily on my birthday. The cake that was supposed to be picked up by David was given to me to pick up because he had something urgent. I wanted to ask him clearly on the phone, but David hung up quickly. I comforted myself that it was not too late to ask him when we met. After getting the cake and going out, I found out unfortunately that the rain had become even heavier. What was worse, my bike broke down. The distance to the party place David had booked wasn't very far. I held an umbrella in one hand and carried the cake in the other, hurrying there, but I still got soaked a lot. David had never asked me to pick up the cake on my birthday. He probably had something more important to do. I kept comforting myself like this until I pushed the door open, but clearly, Jennifer's voice came from the private room. I froze in place, listening to her clear voice coming from the door. She said, "Thank you, David. It's raining so hard, and you still promised to come and pick me up." The door wasn't closed. I was stunned for a second, then numbly looked up and found that everyone was there except me. There were even quite a few unfamiliar faces. Among the crowd, I saw the face I least wanted to see. It wasn't a hallucination. Jennifer was really there. Probably noticing me, someone shouted. And instantly everyone looked over. My embarrassment was on full display. Everyone fell into an eerie silence for a second. Jennifer also turned to look. She stood there gracefully and calmly beside David, forming a sharp contrast with me. Water was still dripping from my sleeves. I stood in front of everyone, soaked and holding the cake, like a clown with nowhere to hide. I had never felt so humiliated. I felt cold all over. Looking up at David, my words came out trembling. I asked him, "Why is Jennifer here?" David didn't expect me to be in such a sorry state. His face immediately changed. I felt my tears welling up in my eyes, as if they would fall with just a blink. I looked up at David, repeating my question. "Why is Jennifer here? Have you been with her these days? Did you pick her up and bring her here today?" Jennifer arrived clean and dry. And on my birthday, I was like a drowned rat, becoming the laughingstock of everyone. David knew very well that I hated Jennifer. I had said more than once that I didn't want to have any more contact with her. Why did it have to be today? Why did it have to be when I was at my most embarrassed? David froze in place. His Adam's apple moved. "Jennifer said she wanted to apologize to you seriously today. Invited a lot of people to witness, and also prepared a birthday gift. That's why I..." David suddenly grabbed my wrist tightly. "I thought we could clear up the misunderstanding today. Jennifer is really nice. There's no need to make things so tense. There's no need. It's always no need. Indeed, there's no need." I looked at David, slowly prying his fingers apart. Then I took off the bracelet on my wrist and returned it to him. I didn't make a scene hysterically like last time. Nor did I say anything. Something I had been holding on to for so long suddenly didn't seem to matter anymore at that moment. The day I left, I didn't tell David. It was just an ordinary afternoon, and David and I came to a complete end. My aunt helped me with the transfer procedures. She said that when she mentioned my name, a boy rushed out during class time. He asked over and over again where I had transferred to. My aunt asked me if he was a very good friend. I shook my head and said softly, "Not anymore." My aunt didn't tell David. And David wouldn't be able to find me. "Mary, how can you be so relaxed? Aren't you nervous? The boss said that all the big shots in the circle will be at this dinner party today." I was pulled back to reality by my colleague Cecilia's voice beside me. The lively banquet hall in front of me was ablaze with lights, extremely luxurious. It had been a full 7 years since I transferred schools. That year after the transfer, I had no other concerns and plunged into my studies. I performed exceptionally well on the college entrance examination. After graduating from university, I smoothly entered this company. After coming back to my senses, I was stunned for a second. "Don't worry, it has nothing to do with small fries like us. You're still a small fry. You've climbed to a position in just 3 years that others can't reach in 10 years. Just then, there was a sudden commotion in the front of the hall. Vaguely, I seemed to hear David's name among the voices. Cecilia swallowed hard beside me. David? The new business tycoon in recent years. Not only is his family rich, but his own startup is also booming. He is actually here too? My body stiffened. As if thinking of something, I looked up. I only saw a tall figure surrounded in the middle. The well-tailored suit was clearly expensive at a glance. Outside profile gave me a strong sense of familiarity. I subconsciously turned around and wanted to leave. "Mary." A voice interrupted all my hopes. There were quite a few people approaching to strike up a conversation, but this person's eyes pierced through the crowd and fixed firmly on me in full view of everyone. He even walked towards me step by step. "Is it fun?" David stared at me, gritting his teeth. "Avoiding me for these entire 7 years." The hall fell silent. Almost all eyes were on me. People were sizing me up and whispering, all wondering when a small employee like me had gotten involved with David. I had no choice but to turn around and meet David's gaze. He seemed to have changed over the years, yet also seemed the same, different from the greenness of that year. After years of struggling in society, he exuded an intimidating aura nowadays. David is someone that most people would come up to and say a few nice words to. I took a step back to create some distance and looked at him quietly. After such a long separation, like 7 years ago, I had nothing to say. Perhaps my backward movement was too big. David suddenly froze in place. He looked up at me, his face looking ugly. "Are you still going to avoid me?" The boss stood not far away, his eyes blinking like a camera shutter, with an obvious hint. Over the years, I've dealt with many people and can easily say some nice diplomatic words, but I just didn't want to cater to David. I just asked him indifferently, "What status do you have that's worthy of me avoiding you?" With this one sentence, the expressions of quite a few people on the scene changed. David's face also paled a bit. "What status?" David stared at me, a mix of unwillingness and anger. He was so angry that he laughed and asked me softly, "Mary, do I need to help you recall?" "Recall what?" "Recall how obviously he took Jennifer's side that year? Or recall that embarrassing birthday in the heavy rain?" The sense of embarrassment and bitterness that had been buried in my heart for all these years welled up again, suppressing my emotions. I also laughed a couple of times. When I spoke, there was a hint of coldness in my voice. "David." I looked up at him and asked sincerely, "Who the hell are you?" David had probably been having a smooth ride these years and was held in high regard. He furrowed his brows, and the resentment in his eyes was obvious. Those eyes stared at me fiercely, but his voice was a bit hoarse when he spoke. "Say that again?" The atmosphere froze. The boss seized the opportunity to step in front of me and subtly pushed me out. The cold wind outside the door soothed my emotions. I didn't expect to get angry because of David again. Cecilia chased after me and handed me a bottle of water, saying with a sense of fear after the event, "David looked so scary just now. How do you know him?" The cold liquid slid down my throat, and I said warily, "That's it for tonight. I'm going back first. Please tell the boss for me." Just as I arrived at the parking lot, Cecilia's message popped up. "You're not here." And David left without looking back. Could he be going to look for you? My eyebrows twitched. Faint footsteps seemed to come from the empty space behind me. David caught up. He ran in a hurry, his chest heaving up and down. He stared straight at me. And after a while, he laughed. "Why leave without saying goodbye? Are you going to disappear quietly again?" I looked at him quietly, not intending to say anything, but David seemed to be ignited by my indifferent look. He laughed ferociously. "What? After avoiding me for 7 years, you have nothing to say to me?" I corrected him. "I didn't avoid you." "Then why did you leave without saying goodbye? Why did you transfer schools without a word? If I didn't come to find you, would you really decide to have no contact with me for the rest of your life?" Leaning against the car, I laughed. "Those are old and trivial things. Who still remembers them?" This sentence seemed to sting David. He stared at me, his eyes suddenly turning red. "Don't remember? Mary, how can you not remember?" These words were like a heavy hammer, hitting the 17-year-old Mary in my heart. I sneered from the bottom of my throat, staring at David. "Why should I remember? David, who do you think you are? Why should I remember that extremely embarrassing and embarrassed feeling? Of course I'm nobody." David's face turned pale, his voice restrained. "But I won't allow you to forget." I didn't want to dwell on this topic any longer. When I turned to leave, David blocked my way. I thought I could control my emotions, but seeing David's self-righteous look, I couldn't help it and slapped him. My fingertips went numb. David's face turned to one side as if he didn't feel the pain. He said softly, "Do you know how long I've been looking for you? Do you know how happy I was when I saw you today?" Before he could finish, a sudden crashing sound exploded in the quiet parking lot. I looked in the direction of the sound and saw Jennifer not far away. I didn't know when she came. Something was broken on the ground. Jennifer stood there in a daze, her eyes staring straight at us, still holding David's coat in her hand. Jennifer had been by David's side all these years. They went to the same university. After graduation, Jennifer joined David's company this time. David came without her, and she ran over to give David a surprise. She stared at David, clearly wanting to cry but seemingly holding back. This look overlapped with the Jennifer from many years ago. I withdrew my gaze and looked at David, laughing. The sarcasm in my smile was so obvious that David's face turned completely pale. Jennifer ran over. The look she gave me was a mix of panic and disgust, but she still forced a smile and greeted me. She said, "Long time no see. Mary, you transferred schools without saying anything back then, and I didn't get a chance to apologize to you properly." As she spoke, she naturally reached out and took David's arm, clearly claiming her ownership, just like back then. Over the years, she didn't seem to have changed at all, but this time, before I could say anything, David suddenly pulled his arm out. He stared at Jennifer and asked in a soft voice, "Jennifer, did I tell you that if you want to keep working in the company, you'd better stop talking nonsense?" With this one sentence, Jennifer's face suddenly turned as white as paper, but she still reached out to tug at David's clothes. "David, is it because of what happened last time? Are you angry with me? I won't do it again. Let's not quarrel. Let's talk about it when we go back, okay?" She was afraid that David would say something in front of me. David distanced himself from her and looked up to explain to me. "There were some accidents back then. Jennifer saved my family, so my mom arranged for her to join the company. Stop, David." Jennifer suddenly rushed over and interrupted David's words. She was crying bitterly. "Don't treat me like this. Let's go back, okay?" David ignored her and continued to finish the rest of his sentence. "I and Jennifer have never had any relationship." David's explanation and Jennifer's crying filled my mind. The scene of our reunion was so noisy that it gave me a headache. They seemed to have said a lot, but I didn't really listen. I only remembered that in the end, when I had a headache and wanted to leave, David grabbed my wrist. His fingers were clenched tightly. David said that over the years, he had never forgotten me. Then he asked me what he could do to make me forgive him. It was quite strange. The person I didn't care much about back then, why did he seem so deeply in love 7 years later? I couldn't figure it out. nor did I want to delve into it. I pried his hand away and silently mouthed 3 words in front of him: "Stop pretending." After getting some distance from David, I got in the car and left without looking back. I didn't want to have any more contact with them, but early the next morning, the company group chat exploded. The messages were one exciting piece of news after another. "Holy crap, whose big shot black Bentley is that next to the company entrance? Those license plates starting with a string of 6s. I saw the owner, he is so handsome, but his aura is a bit intimidating." So I didn't dare to look for more than a couple of glances. The last time the group was this lively was when someone's wife publicly beat up the mistress. I suddenly sat up straight, staring at the screen, wide awake. A person's name was about to blurt out. When I rushed to the company, that Bentley was parked our high-profile line next to the company. Quite a few people around were secretly looking at it and gossiping the owner. However, didn't care and let them look. He was leaning against the car, his head lowered, as if thinking about something. That familiar side profile allowed me to identify him almost immediately. David. As if sensing something, David looked up sharply. He looked at me quietly, with no expression on his face, but usually, with this kind of stance, it means he's not going to let it go easily. He was angry that I left without looking back last night, so he came to the company early in the morning to wait for me. "Can we talk?" he asked. "About what?" I found it funny. "What is there left to talk about between us?" "A lot." David looked at me seriously. "Over these years, I've had a lot to say to you." "What if I say I don't want to?" David looked at me quietly for 2 seconds. "You should know that what I lack the least is patience." "Suit yourself." I withdrew my gaze and walked straight into the company without looking back. David stayed downstairs all the time. Cecilia and the new male intern, Daniel, kept glancing downstairs. "Isn't that David? Is he crazy? He doesn't leave even when it's raining." Daniel, the gossipy intern, leaned in. "Is this guy really here for Sister Mary? Maybe he did something to make Sister Mary angry and now he's putting on a show of being affectionate." Cecilia took a sip of coffee. "You think you know everything." Daniel had a look of "I know it all." "In public like this, it's just moral kidnapping. Men are really no good." Cecilia gave him a strange look. "Aren't you a man?" "How can I be counted as one?" Daniel exclaimed. "I would never make Sister Mary angry. I'd only feel sorry for Sister Mary." I glanced out of the window. The rain was falling steadily. The autumn rain was particularly cold. David was holding an umbrella, looking up from afar, standing there. I couldn't see his expression clearly, but it wasn't hard to imagine what he looked like. He always had that cold, indifferent look with a touch of stubbornness. The David who used to try every way to make me laugh after making me unhappy looked just like this. Once he set his mind on something, few people could stop him. After not seeing him for all these years, David seemed even more difficult to deal with than before. I withdrew my gaze and didn't say anything. It was not until it was completely dark and everyone in the company had left after I finished my overtime work. I glanced downstairs. That annoying person was still there. I turned off my computer and secretly slipped out through the back door. In the evening, Cecilia created a group chat. She and Daniel were chatting non-stop, determined to get the story between David and me out. I was forced to stay up late. After chatting, while I was brushing my teeth, the group chat suddenly exploded with over 99 messages, all of which were concerned words for David from the 2 of them. Before going to bed, Daniel privately messaged me, "Sister Mary, I avenged you. How about that?" Daniel was always one to talk big, so I didn't take it too seriously and just replied that he should go to bed early the next day. David still didn't leave. He was clearly determined to act shamelessly here. I took a glance and skillfully entered the company through the back door. Not long after I entered, there was a sudden exclamation in the company. Even the boss was alerted when Cecilia came back from gossiping. Her face was full of complex expressions. "That scoundrel David. I had a bad feeling." "What did he do again?" "He probably wants to add your WeChat. Just ignore it." "I definitely did." Cecilia pointed downstairs. "But there are plenty of people willing to give it to him." Under my gaze, Cecilia said with difficulty, "He's offering 100,000 yuan as a reward to whoever gives him your WeChat." The next second, my phone vibrated. There was a new WeChat message. It was from a colleague in the adjacent department. Sorry, Sister Mary. My phone vibrated again. There was a new friend request. It's David. I rubbed my temples in frustration. Before I could digest this news, there was another exclamation. These exclamations in the past few days seemed to have used up all the exclamations the company would make in 3 years. A flamboyantly colored sports car provocatively parked in front of the Bentley. The distance between the two cars was so close that it was almost negligible. Gossip is always hard to resist. Many people were leaning out of the windows to look. Who is this again? I don't know. Hey, he's getting out of the car. Wait. Why does this person look a bit familiar? Doesn't he look like that rich intern under Sister Mary? My eyebrows twitched. I took a closer look and sure enough, it was Daniel. After getting out of the car, Daniel took off his sunglasses, looked David up and down, sneered, and gave him the middle finger. He seemed to say something, but it was inaudible. It definitely wasn't anything nice. My scalp tingled. I grabbed my phone and ran downstairs. By the time I got downstairs, the two of them were already fighting. I knew very well that David really didn't have a good temper, having lived a pampered life all these years. How could he tolerate an ungraduated college student making a scene in front of him? Daniel's mouth was badly broken, bruised and purple. He wiped the corner of his mouth, looked at me with a well-behaved tone. Sister Mary, I'm fine. Even if he started the fight, I got my revenge. Daniel had been in the company for a short time and always cared a lot about his good-looking face. I knew he was trying to avenge me, but I didn't expect him to get beaten up like this. I suddenly felt extremely annoyed with David. I turned to look at him coldly. Are you done? Even if Daniel said something, is it necessary for you to start hitting him first? As soon as I finished speaking, David, who had been standing there stunned, slowly looked up at me. He seemed to have never been this embarrassed before. His face wasn't any better than Daniel's, perhaps even worse. But he seemed not to care about the injuries. His face was pale, and his eyes were full of shock and disbelief. I started. Hitting someone? Daniel let out a soft hiss beside me. Sister Mary, don't be angry. These minor injuries will heal in a few days. It doesn't hurt. Let us go back to the company first. At the moment I turned around, David suddenly grabbed my wrist. His fingertips were cold, and he smiled sadly. So, without asking, just based on his word, you decided that I started the fight. I shook off his hand. If you want to talk, we can talk thoroughly after work. Daniel turned his head and grinned at David. Until after work. David was still there. He just endured with that beaten-up face, not even bothering to deal with it, and waited until evening. Daniel and I left the company together. David came over and was just about to speak when Daniel let out another soft hiss. He held out his hand to me. Sister Mary, my hand hurts. I'm afraid I can't. Doctor, seeing this hand, David suddenly felt his face ache. Then, as if realizing something, he took a step forward and looked at me. You promised to talk to me. Daniel lowered his eyes. Actually, I can endure the pain and drive. If Sister Mary has something to do, it's okay. You don't need to send me home. I looked at Daniel. I'll send you home first. David froze in place, looking at me in disbelief. The light in his eyes gradually dimmed. On the way, having a subway session, Daniel confessed to me. Sister Mary, actually I was the one who started the fight. He treated Sister Mary like that before, so it's his turn to taste what it's like not to be trusted. I noticed. I looked at him. Don't use this method in the future. It's a pity to hurt this handsome face. Daniel was taken aback, then smiled with his eyes curved. Okay. When I came back, the sky was slightly dark. David stood in the twilight, with an empty space around him. For some reason, this scene made me think of an abandoned animal, but David had never been mine. I looked at him. After all this commotion, say whatever you want to say clearly. During the day, I didn't start the fight. David was silent for a long time, then suddenly blurted out this sentence. I didn't expect David to still be obsessed with this matter. This isn't important. Get to the point. It is important. David was obsessed about this question. He stared at me blankly. Mary, you never used to take sides with others like this before. The word before seemed so long ago. After all these years, everyone changes. Moreover, for me now, Daniel isn't an outsider. You are. The sky was almost completely dark. It was cold at night. David froze in place, rolling these two words on the tip of his tongue and repeating them softly. An outsider. He slowly lowered his eyes and forced a smile. When he spoke again, his voice was half hoarse. A few days before your birthday. After school. I was indeed with Jennifer because she kept coming to me, wanting to apologize to you. I knew you didn't like seeing her. So I didn't dare to let you know. On your birthday, Jennifer said she had already bought a birthday gift and found a lot of people she just wanted to apologize sincerely. So I helped with this. Over these years, Jennifer and I have never had any relationship. After finishing the explanation, David looked up. His eyes landed on me. Reflecting my figure, he quietly waited for my response. Okay. I know. Is that all? I tightened my coat. So I'm going home. David looked at me, suddenly becoming red-eyed from being provoked by these words. So you left without a word for so long. Don't you have anything to say to me? It was rather ridiculous after transferring schools. I had thought about these questions that David mentioned over and over again at night. David, who was so close to me, how could he suddenly take the side of another girl he had just met? I could never figure it out and couldn't forget David. So I cried many times. David's presence had permeated every part of my life. I always told myself that it was all in the past now that I no longer cared. I finally got this pale and weak explanation. No, I looked at him. The explanations are clear. David. Let's end it here. I don't want to. David suddenly came over and hugged me. His knuckles tightened. And his voice trembled by my ear. I seemed to feel that David was about to cry. He said, Mary, after you transferred schools that year, I looked for you for a long time. I didn't expect the rain to be so heavy. Over these years, I've always thought that if I hadn't asked you to pick up the cake, if I hadn't agreed to Jennifer's request, things would have been different. But you left so quickly that you didn't give me a chance to explain. I retorted. Was it me who didn't give you a chance? David? Time and time again. Which time didn't you take Jennifer's side? Yes, sat in These were indeed all small things. But David, you've always been smart since you were a child. Couldn't you really tell whether Jennifer's words were true or false? I'm sorry. It won't happen again. David's voice choked. Don't avoid me anymore. That year, I ran to so many cities, but I couldn't find you anywhere. A small part of my shoulder got wet, and it felt cold in the cold wind. I had never thought before that David, who was so proud to the core, would cry. I always liked to follow David around. Whenever I got into trouble, he could easily solve it for me. At that time, I never thought that one day I would be separated from David, but reality taught me that relying too much on someone would eventually lead to a hard fall. I had fallen, and it hurt. It took me many years to fade the pain away, that I pushed David away and said softly, It's over, David. Don't come looking for me anymore. David's eyes were red-rimmed. His face deathly pale, and his voice was so dry that he could barely speak. I turned around and walked back. I heard a very low and soft voice coming from behind. Mixed with pain and sadness, he said, I can't do it. Later. The Bentley no longer appeared beside the company, but every morning, a florist would come to the company to deliver flowers. Mary, these flowers are freshly picked. Wish you a pleasant day. At noon, someone would also come specifically to deliver lunch. Cecilia came over. Isn't this our favorite restaurant? It's extremely expensive. The restaurant staff smiled. Mary is our restaurant top-tier VIP. If you have any favorite ingredients, you can tell us at any time. It wasn't just this restaurant. In every store I had been to, I was made a VIP in my name. Even the mortgage on my current house had been paid off in advance by someone. It was obvious without thinking who was behind all these things. This David. Cecilia's eyes widened. After thinking for a long time, she managed to come up with a few words. He's really rich. I tried to contact him many times to return the money, but David returned it all. He said it was compensation for his past guilt. The next time I saw David was during the company's team building camping. The boss said that there would be a rare meteor shower that night, and the best viewing spot was right where we were. On the way, Cecilia and Daniel chattered non-stop, and it was so noisy that my ears ached. Finally, when we arrived at the destination, it was a bit quieter, but unfortunately, I saw David. He was standing not far away, with his hands in his pockets, standing in the wind, back to his usual cold and unapproachable look. The David with red-rimmed eyes that night seemed like a dream to me. He looked over from a distance, smiled at me, and said, "What a coincidence." Daniel was grilling skewers and sneered. "David really knows how to joke. Your company is miles away from here." "Indeed," David nodded. "But the branch company is here." "Since when is there a branch company?" David looked natural. "Just now." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Crazy." David wasn't joking. His branch company was indeed going to be located here, but his excuse of bringing employees here 14 building in advance was a bit unconvincing. Among that group of people, I still saw Jennifer. However, she was much more subdued, staring at David without rushing over like last time. David took the initiative to come over and chat with the boss. The boss had always wanted to cooperate with David's company, so naturally, he wouldn't refuse. As they talked, the boss's topic landed on the ingredients David had brought in that car. David was very generous. The supplies he brought for the team building were twice as much as the boss's. David took the opportunity and asked, "Why not join us? It'll be more lively." The boss readily agreed. Daniel sneered. "That evil David clearly came here for Sister Mary." The boss knocked his head hard. "Do you think I can't tell? Free stuff, why not take it?" Daniel burned the skewer for the boss before giving it to him. "Aren't you selling her out?" The boss sighed. "Haven't you noticed? Your Sister Mary has already let go." When the two companies got together, it was indeed much livelier, but whatever I did, David would come over to help. He took the grilled skewer from my hand. As the oil sizzled, he asked me, "How have you been recently?" I said, "Everything's fine, that's good." While chatting with David, I could feel Jennifer's gaze fixed on me without moving. Later, she also found an excuse to come over and talk to me. I thought she had changed, until the hot soup spilled on her hand in a way that was all too similar to what happened 7 years ago. Then I realized she hadn't improved at all. Everyone around was drawn by the scream. People from the two companies looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Jennifer probably wanted to play the same old trick and make it hard for me to stay in the company. She had succeeded back then. I had never really fit into class 3. But now, before I could say anything, Cecilia and Daniel quickly surrounded me. "Damn it. Are you done? Come on, if you want to frame someone, you should at least consider the situation. This is our company's territory. Is Sister Mary someone you can mess with casually? Besides, even if, hypothetically, it was Sister Mary who did it, you deserved it." A barrage of words came pouring in. Things didn't go the way Jennifer had imagined. She stood there frozen, looking at them. And the words she was about to say got stuck in her throat. Her eyes red, she turned her gaze to her own company, but was blocked by David. He looked at Jennifer. His voice cold and emotional. "Says Jennifer, after you go back to the company, submit your resignation letter and move to another city." With these words, no one spoke up for Jennifer anymore. Jennifer's face lost all its color. I picked up the cold water beside me and poured it over her head. With a splash, the cold water poured down. Jennifer shivered violently. She looked up at me in disbelief. I looked at Jennifer and told her with a smile, "This time, I really did it. You seem so eager to be splashed by me. How could I not satisfy you?" After blowing the cold wind all day, we still couldn't see the meteor shower. When I went to get my scarf, it was too dark all around, and I stepped wrong and sprained my ankle. I sat on the ground as a stabbing pain spread. It seemed that someone in the crowd was running over anxiously. Before I could react, I was already on David's back. The mountain road was too narrow for cars to drive up. Without a word, David carried me down the mountain. The night air was filled with a chill. The beads of sweat formed on David's forehead. He walked in a hurry, step by step, yet afraid of making too much of a jolt, so he kept asking me if it hurt along the way. His voice was the same as that night, anxious and at a loss. In a trance, it merged with the voice of David when we were kids, making me lose myself for a moment. I said, "It's not too bad." but actually, it really hurt. So much that I didn't feel like talking. I closed my eyes to distract me. David talked a lot. He told me many things from our childhood, things I knew and things I didn't. He also asked me if I remembered the bracelet he gave me before my birthday. In fact, I had never had the chance to ask him how he knew I liked that bracelet. David laughed and said that he noticed it the first time I looked at it and had been preparing it for a long time now. That bracelet was still carefully stored in his cabinet. I felt a lump in my throat, slowly opened my eyes and looked at the dark road ahead, not saying anything. David also said that on my birthday, when I walked into the heavy rain without looking back, he was about to chase after me when a phone call came. Something had happened at home. He rushed home in a hurry and was extremely busy those days. He planned to come and talk to me as soon as he was done. At that time, no matter what I said, he wouldn't make me angry anymore. But when he finished, I suddenly disappeared. My phone was blocked. And suddenly, he had no way to contact me. He thought I was just being angry, so he bought a cake and squatted outside my door for a day and a night. The cake melted beyond recognition. But he never saw the door open. Then, one day, he saw someone come to the school to handle the transfer procedures for me during class. David's mind went blank, and he finally realized something was wrong. He ran out and begged my aunt again and again. But in the end, my aunt didn't tell him a specific address. Speaking of this, David laughed. His voice was a mix of complaint and guilt, saying that I transferred schools without a word, not even saying goodbye. I lowered my eyes, not knowing what to say, and also tried to change the topic like him. I said, "Don't get me any more VIP memberships. And about the mortgage, I'll pay you back slowly." David suddenly stopped in his tracks. His fingers tightened slightly, and his voice became hoarse. He said, "Do you really not want to have any connection with me?" I said, "I don't want to owe anyone." David had taken care of me a lot over those years, let us call it even for the past, and neither of us owes the other. David shook his head, saying he didn't want it. Then he started walking forward again. The cold wind howled in my ears. I felt David's fingertips trembling. Probably because of my foot pain, my nose inexplicably felt a bit sore. After a moment of silence, I said, "In a while, I'm going to leave this city and be the boss of the branch company." On David's back, I felt his whole body freeze. The wind was too cold. David took a deep breath, and his voice suddenly became hoarse. His voice mixed with the wind. Every word came with a deep breath. "Leaving again?" I softly told him. Ed. Later, David didn't say another word. He walked forward in silence. David took me to the hospital and took care of everything for me. In the ward, only the sound of breathing could be heard. David sat by the bedside, staring at me motionless, as if trying to engrave my face in his heart. After a long time, he finally spoke, asking with a smile, "When will you be back?" But that smile was so forced. I said, "Who knows? Maybe if things go well. Maybe I'll never come back." David's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. His eyes were filled with a sadness I had never seen before. "Will we see each other again?" I buried my head in the quilt and gently shook my head. "Probably not." As soon as I said that, the light in David's eyes completely vanished into the darkness. He lowered his eyes for a long time, then forced out a faint okay from his throat. The day I left the city, it was snowing. The air was filled with a bone-chilling cold. I knew David was not far behind me. Dependence is a terrifying thing. I had fallen once, badly hurt since I chose to leave back then. I never thought about getting back together, as if nothing had happened. The idea of a broken mirror being restored to its original state is too unrealistic. I would never throw myself back into the rain of my teenage years. I held onto my suitcase and walked forward step by step, never looking back.